Being the leader of OTF does not automatically make Lil Durk responsible for every action allegedly taken by someone connected to the organization. That may become the central issue in his federal trial. Prosecutors accuse Durk of helping finance a 2022 plot that allegedly targeted rapper Quando Rondo. But proving that Durk paid for travel or knew the people involved may not be enough to convict him. The government must convince the jury that Durk knew the alleged purpose of the trip and intentionally participated in the plan. That could depend on financial records, travel information, phone data, surveillance footage, and witness testimony. Durk's defense will likely challenge how prosecutors interpreted each piece of evidence. A flight purchased through OTF could have been legitimate business travel. A rental vehicle could have been used for reasons unrelated to a crime. A conversation that appears suspicious after the fact might have had a completely different meaning when it occurred. Prosecutors will argue that the evidence must be considered together, not separately. If the same individuals traveled to California, followed Quando Rondo, and used resources connected to OTF, the government may claim those details form one coordinated plan. Durk's attorneys only need to create reasonable doubt about his personal involvement. They can argue that prosecutors are trying to hold a successful artist responsible for the independent actions of people around him. But the government believes Durk was not simply associated with the defendants. Prosecutors allege that he occupied a leadership role and knowingly provided resources that helped make the attack possible. The outcome may depend on whether jurors see Durk as the person directing the alleged plot or as the famous name prosecutors place at the center of someone else's actions. On August 19, 2022, Quando Rondo and his cousin Savia Robinson, also known as Lil Pob, were at a gas station near Beverly Grove in Los Angeles. A vehicle approached and gunfire broke out. Quando Rondo survived, but Robinson was struck and killed. Federal prosecutors believe Quando was the intended target. According to the indictment, 5 people connected to OTF traveled from Chicago to California as part of an alleged plan to locate and kill him. The government claims the group used multiple vehicles while following Quando and waiting for an opportunity to attack. Prosecutors further allege that travel arrangements and other expenses connected to the trip were paid using funds associated with Durk or OTF. But that does not automatically prove Durk ordered a shooting. Durk is a successful artist and the leader of a music organization that regularly pays for flights, hotels, rental vehicles, and work-related travel. His defense can argue that ordinary business expenses do not establish criminal intent. Prosecutors must directly connect those payments to the alleged plot. That distinction could become one of the biggest battles in the trial. The government must do more than show that Durk knew the defendants or paid expenses connected to OTF. Prosecutors must convince the jury that he knowingly participated in or helped finance a plan to commit murder. In October 2024, federal agents arrested several people allegedly connected to the case. Durk was arrested in Florida near an airport after authorities discovered that he had reportedly booked international travel. Prosecutors portrayed those arrangements as evidence that he was attempting to leave the country after learning about the arrest. Durk's lawyers dispute that interpretation. They argue that an international entertainer booking travel is not unusual and does not prove he knew an indictment was coming. Durk was transferred to federal custody in Los Angeles, where he pleaded not guilty. His legal team offered a multi-million-dollar bond package that reportedly included property, cash, and around-the-clock monitoring. The court still refused to release him. That means Durk has remained behind bars while his attorneys prepare for a trial that could determine the rest of his life. Now, prosecutors want jurors to examine more than financial and travel records. They also want to use Durk's public statements, social media activity, interviews, music videos, and lyrics to explain their theory of the case. The government argues that this material is not being introduced simply because it contains violent words. Prosecutors claim the timing, visuals, and context connect portions of the music to the alleged retaliation plot. One major dispute involves the "Piss Me Off" video. Prosecutors argue that the video and portions of the song help show Durk's state of mind following King Von's death. The defense says Durk is performing an artistic character and using the exaggerated imagery that has existed throughout hip-hop for decades. A judge has reportedly allowed prosecutors to present portions of that material. However, the government was not given permission to use everything it requested. That creates a major question for both sides. Will jurors view the music as one piece of evidence supporting an already established timeline? Or will they treat Durk's lyrics like a confession? Prosecutors may not be able to prove when every lyric was written, who helped write it, or whether it describes a real event. Durk's attorneys are expected to argue that rap lyrics should not automatically be interpreted literally. Actors portraying criminals are not assumed to commit those crimes away from the camera. The defense may ask why rappers are frequently treated differently. Prosecutors will likely argue that artistic expression can become relevant when it contains specific details or statements that match independent evidence. That means the context surrounding each lyric will matter more than the lyric by itself. Durk's defense recently secured an important legal victory. Federal prosecutors attempted to expand the case by adding separate gang and racketeering-related allegations involving events in Chicago. Durk's attorneys argued that introducing those accusations so close to trial would completely change the case they had prepared to defend. The judge agreed to separate those additional allegations from the original Los Angeles murder-for-hire case. That decision prevents the upcoming jury from hearing one massive case combining numerous allegations from different cities. Instead, this trial is expected to focus more narrowly on the 2022 Los Angeles shooting. That does not make the original charges disappear, but it gives Durk's lawyers a more defined target. The defense can now concentrate on several critical questions. Is there a message, recording, or witness that directly shows Durk ordering the alleged attack? Can prosecutors prove Durk knew the true purpose of the travel and expenses? Can every digital communication be properly authenticated? And will cooperating witnesses have their own reasons for blaming Durk? If the government relies heavily on circumstantial evidence, Durk's attorneys may argue that prosecutors are building a story around his fame, lyrics, and association with OTF. But circumstantial evidence can still produce a conviction. Prosecutors do not necessarily need a recording of someone explicitly ordering a crime. A jury can consider financial records, travel patterns, surveillance footage, phone data, messages, and witness testimony. The government will argue that those individual pieces form one complete picture. Durk's defense only needs to create reasonable doubt. His attorneys may offer innocent explanations for the payments and travel. They can challenge the reliability of witnesses and question how prosecutors interpreted digital messages. They can also argue that Durk cannot be held responsible for every action taken by someone connected to his label. This case will affect more than Lil Durk. It could become another major example of how rap lyrics and music videos are used inside American courtrooms. If prosecutors successfully connect Durk's music to independent evidence, the government will argue that the case is based on conduct, not art. If the case falls apart, critics will say prosecutors attempted to transform a rapper's public image into proof of a crime. Either way, the jury must separate Lil Durk, the recording artist, from Durk Banks, the defendant. Durk is facing extremely serious federal charges. The conviction could result in him spending decades or possibly the remainder of his life in prison. But an indictment is not a conviction. The government still carries the burden of proving its allegations beyond a reasonable doubt. The entire case may ultimately come down to one question. Can prosecutors prove that Lil Durk personally authorized or knowingly financed the alleged plot? Or will the evidence only establish that people connected to OTF acted independently while using resources tied to the organization? The answer could determine whether one of Chicago's biggest rap stars ever comes home. After hearing both sides, do you believe rap lyrics should be allowed as evidence when prosecutors claim they match real events? And do you think the government has enough evidence to convict Lil Durk? Leave your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to All Street Access and turn on notifications for continuing coverage as the trial develops.